Imagine, right? You hand a cashier a $20 bill for a toaster.
Okay, a toaster.
Yeah, just a regular toaster. But instead of taking it home to your kitchen, the cashier hands you like this massive contract.
Uh-oh.
Right. And the contract explicitly states that the store can, at any point, break into your house, unplug the toaster, and just smash it to pieces.
Wow.
With zero warning, no refund, nothing.
I mean, you would never accept that in the real world.
Right, yeah.
That completely violates the basic laws of commerce.
Exactly. But welcome to the modern video game industry, because that exact scenario isn't just, a theoretical thing anymore. It's actually the foundational business model we're dealing with right now.
It really is. It's like this ultimate consumer rights illusion. We're looking at this multi-billion-dollar market that is basically, and very quietly, I might add, redefined what it actually means to purchase a product.
Yeah.
The whole boundary of ownership has just completely evaporated.
And that disappearing act is exactly the mission for today. We are doing a massive deep dive into the death of digital ownership.
And this one is, it's pretty personal for us.
It is. I need to put our cards on the table right away for you listening, because the sources we're unpacking today are incredibly close to home.
Super close.
We're looking at a fiery and, unfiltered video rant from July 2nd, 2026. And alongside that, a blistering editorial published in the Chaos Gazette on July 4th.
Fresh off the presses.
Right. And both of these were created by Bugsy No Name. He is the editor-in-chief of the Gazette. And, well, full disclosure here, he's our boss.
Which, definitely puts an interesting lens on how we approach all this material.
It does, because normally, you know how this deep dive works. We take the sources, we stay emotionally detached, we look at the data from, 30,000 feet.
Ready to keep it objective.
Exactly. But today is different. We read this editorial, we watched this video, and honestly, we are completely on his side.
Oh, 100%.
His absolute fury about this corporate gaming overreach is totally justified. It is pissing us off, too, and we're going to unpack exactly why his arguments hold so much water for, well, really anyone who consumes media today.
But before we get too deep into the weeds, because we are diving into some heavily regulated, kind of sensitive territory, I do need to lay down a quick boundary for the deep dive.
Right, the legal stuff.
Yeah. The video source touches on some very legally sensitive areas. So just to be perfectly clear to you listening, any discussions we have today regarding illegal actions, the definition of piracy or, corporate hearings, are strictly us analyzing the arguments presented into Bugsy's source material.
We are just conveying his ideas.
Exactly. We are not endorsing any illegal activities. Our goal is simply to explore the profound frustration that's driving these conversations in the first place.
Yeah, we're looking at the symptoms of a broken system. And I think the most glaring symptom right now is how these corporations are treating the very people who actually keep their games alive.
It's wild.
In this video, Bugsy is there's this palpable outrage over a recent Microsoft hearing.
Oh, yeah. He does not hold back.
No, he doesn't. The crux of his anger is that people who use and create private Minecraft servers are actively being painted by executives as, criminals.
Right.
The video flat out calls out Microsoft. He basically says, you guys don't know games, and you clearly don't know your fans.
And to really understand that outrage, we kind of have to look at the mechanics of what a private server actually is.
Mm-hmm.
Bugsy uses this really striking analogy in the video.
It's a Disneyland one.
Yeah, the Disneyland analogy. He defends these fan-made servers, specifically highlighting one called Imagine Fun, and he compares them to building a virtual Disneyland. Because out of the box, the base version of Minecraft, what the community calls vanilla Minecraft, it's essentially just a bucket of digital Legos.
Right, it has rules, it has hard limits.
Exactly.
You can, build a house, you can fight a zombie, but you cannot run a fully automated, massively multiplayer theme park with custom economy systems and mini games just using the vanilla software.
No, you can't. So what happens is fans spend thousands of hours writing custom code. They modify the game's architecture. They host it on their own privately funded hardware to create these incredible, completely bespoke experiences.
Things the original developer never even dreamed of.
Right. They are literally building a Disneyland, and suddenly corporate is stepping in and labeling all of that innovation as a criminal enterprise.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for just a second, because I want to make sure we're really testing Bugsy's argument.
Sure enough.
If I am a Microsoft executive and I own the intellectual property of Minecraft, don't I have, like, a legal fiduciary duty to police unauthorized servers?
Well, that's the corporate line.
Right, because if they let fans build these massive Disneylands using their copyrighted IP, aren't they risking their own brand safety? Like, what if someone gets scammed on one of these private servers?
And that is exactly the corporate justification they use. And to be fair, Bugsy explicitly concedes in the video that bad actors do exist. He acknowledges that if there's malicious activity on a private server, like if people are running financial scams or stealing identities, then yes, shut it down. Those are legitimate traps.
Yeah.
But the argument he's making is about proportionality and really intent. When you reverse engineer a server, you're basically standing outside a locked restaurant, observing what the waiters bring out, and trying to build an exact replica of that kitchen in your own home, just based on the taste of the food.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. It takes immense dedication and coding knowledge to trick a game into thinking it's talking to an official server.
Yeah.
The vast majority of people doing this are not malicious hackers. They're preservationists. They're enthusiasts.
Yeah, as Bugsy states in the video, they are just chilling and having fun.
Exactly. So applying this blanket criminal label to the entire ecosystem is just fundamentally ignorant of how gaming culture operates.
It kind of reminds me of building a custom treehouse.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah, imagine you go to a massive lumber company, right?
Yeah.
You buy a stack of 2x4s and you take them back to your own private backyard.
Okay.
You spend weeks building this beautiful, elaborate treehouse for your friends to hang out in, and then a year later, the lumber company sends a team of lawyers with clipboards to your house, declares your treehouse an illegal, unsanctioned housing development.
Just because you use their wood?
Exactly. And they call you a criminal for how you arranged the wood that they already sold you.
It perfectly illustrates the overreach because it highlights the sheer absurdity of policing post-purchase creativity. And what makes this corporate policing even more frustrating, I think, is the historical reality of why these private servers usually exist in the first place.
Oh, this is the best part of the video.
Yeah, Bugsy brings up incredibly potent historical examples to prove that this isn't just about rebellion. It's about survival.
Yes. The historical context here is so crucial. He brings up Quake Arena on the Sega Dreamcast and this old game called The Matrix Online.
Let's break those down for a second because they are vital to understanding the consumer mindset. For anyone listening who might not be deep into gaming history, the Sega Dreamcast was a console from the late 90s, and it was revolutionary because it had built-in online play.
Way ahead of its time.
Way ahead.
Hold
And
on.
Quake Arena was a huge title for it. Then you have the Matrix Online, which was an MMO, a massively multiplayer online game.
Right.
And an MMO is basically a living, breathing, virtual city. It requires massive, expensive, constant server upkeep by the publisher just to exist.
But the thing is, eventually, those publishers stop making money on those old games.
Precisely. The corporations abandoned the infrastructure. Sega shut down the Dreamcast servers decades ago. Warner Bros. Pulled the plug on the Matrix Online.
Yep.
And when that happens, the game doesn't just lose a feature, it effectively ceases to exist. It becomes a plastic coaster. So what happens? The fans step up.
They do it themselves.
They reverse engineer the server architecture. They pay for the hosting out of their own pockets. They keep the culture alive when the corporations literally throw it in the trash.
And viewing that act of cultural preservation as illegal is just mind-boggling.
Oh boy.
Bugsy explicitly says, that's like saying Quake Arena on the Dreamcast is illegal.
Yeah.
It's absurd. But, you know, his anger here goes even deeper than just server policing. The video ties this crackdown to the whole Microsoft rumor mill, and this is where the hypocrisy really starts to sting.
Right. We're talking about the broader corporate strategy here.
Yeah, because the video aggressively claims that Microsoft doesn't even care about gaming anymore.
He's furious about it.
He brings up these pervasive rumors that they are selling off Xbox, that they're just packing it in and abandoning the hardware market entirely to focus on software and cloud services.
And honestly, regardless of how those rumors ultimately pan out, we have to look at the psychological impact they have on the consumer base right now. This is the root of the profound anger we're seeing in Bugsy's rant. The consumer is looking at this massive corporation that appears to be packing its bags, preparing to abandon its dedicated hardware fan base, while simultaneously deploying an army of lawyers to aggressively police how those exact same fans play the games they already bought.
It's like a landlord who refuses to fix the plumbing in your apartment, announces they are selling the building, but still threatens to evict you for painting your own bedroom walls.
That's a perfect analogy.
It's a massive betrayal of trust. And frankly, this policing of where we are allowed to play is just the first domino falling. Because if corporations are willing to aggressively police the digital spaces where we play, it's really only a matter of time before they start policing the digital objects we play with.
Which brings us to the actual licenses, the transition from policing the community to policing ownership itself.
Exactly. The video pivots its grievance away from Microsoft and targets Sony. And Bugsy drops this incredibly stark quote that pretty much sets the stage for the rest of this deep dive.
It's a heavy quote.
The claim is that Sony's underlying message to consumers right now is, quote, "Nothing you bought on Sony is yours. It's ours."
And that realization is a really bitter pill for the market to swallow. We really need to explain the mechanics of how a digital license actually works to understand why Bugsy's quote is so devastatingly accurate.
Please do.
When you log on to a digital storefront, whether it's PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, whatever, and you click a button that says buy now for $70, you are not engaging in a traditional sale.
Right. You are not buying the toaster.
You are not buying the toaster. You are agreeing to an EULA, an end-user license agreement. Historically, like in the 80s and 90s, these agreements were put into software boxes just to prevent you from legally copying a floppy disk and selling it to your neighbor.
Basic copyright stuff.
Exactly. But in the modern digital era, the EULA has mutated. It now acts as a conditional, highly revocable lease. You are buying a permission slip to access the software, and that permission slip is tied to a system called DRM.
Digital rights management.
Right. DRM is basically a digital bouncer. Every single time you try to launch your game, the DRM checks your license against a remote corporate server. It asks, does this person still have permission to play this?
And if it says yes?
If the server says yes, the game boops. But if the server says no, or worse, if the server doesn't even exist anymore because the company shut it down, the handshake fails. You are locked out of the thing you paid for.
And knowing that you are spending premium currency for a highly revocable asset, well, that leads the video source into a wildly controversial, but I think psychologically fascinating take on the concept of digital piracy.
Oh, this is a huge point.
And again, just to reiterate your disclaimer from earlier, Bugsy explicitly states in the video, "I do not condone piracy. I wouldn't be involved in it anyway." He is absolutely covering his bases.
As he should.
But after establishing that boundary, he makes this profound observation. He argues that people pirate because they want to actually own the stuff that they get.
Right.
They don't do it just to be malicious or to steal. They do it to reclaim permanence.
It's a really radical diagnosis of market dynamics. He is framing piracy not purely as a criminal act of theft, but as a symptom of a broken consumer relationship.
Yeah.
He's arguing that when legitimate legal avenues of purchase actively remove the fundamental human right of ownership, consumers will inevitably turn to illegitimate avenues, not even just to save money, but to satisfy the basic psychological need to actually possess the thing they traded their labor for.
I really want to push on this concept for a second. Let's look at the financial reality. A consumer spends $70, $80, sometimes $100 or more on a, digital deluxe edition of a game.
Oh yeah, the prices keep going up.
Right. But the platform's terms of service treat that transaction as a lease that can be terminated at any time for almost any reason without a refund. By stripping away ownership, isn't the industry essentially manufacturing the exact black market it's spending millions of dollars trying to fight?
Honestly.
Like, are we shifting away from a product-based economy entirely and moving into a ransom-based economy where you're basically just paying for continued access until the corporation decides to pull the plug?
From the perspective of Bugsy's sources that we're analyzing, yes, the industry is absolutely manufacturing its own opposition. The whole social contract of commerce relies on permanence. When you hand over your money, you expect the item to be yours.
Right. The toaster is mine.
The toaster is yours. When corporations use EULAs and DRM to break that social contract, consumers feel ethically justified in bypassing the official storefronts entirely. They feel justified in stripping out the DRM just so they can have a file on a hard drive that no executive can delete remotely.
It's just a desperate attempt to reclaim control.
It really is.
But what is so frustrating about this dynamic is how the gaming community is treated when they try to raise these very legitimate, systemic consumer rights issues. The video goes on this highly relatable side tangent about the stigma of the word gamer.
Oh, he was so heated about this.
He is utterly exhausted by the term being treated as a mainstream punchline. He asks why everyone has to shove gamer into every lazy, dumb joke.
And, that isn't just Bugsy venting. It actually highlights a massive barrier to advocacy. Think about how the broader culture views this demographic.
Yeah.
When the mainstream media or the general public treats gamers as a goofy, juvenile stereotype like, people living in basements eating junk food, it actively undermines their ability to be taken seriously in a high-level economic debate.
Exactly, because it's hard to sit at the table and debate digital licensing law, the ethics of DRM, and multinational corporate overreach when the other side views your entire demographic as a punchline.
Right.
The source is demanding respect for the medium because the financial stakes are incredibly high, and the legal precedents being set here will eventually bleed into movies, books, software, everything.
Which perfectly sets the stage for Bugsy's formal editorial in the Chaos Gazette.
Oh man, the editorial.
In the video, we saw the raw, emotional rant about the threat of losing ownership. But in the written editorial, that abstract threat crystallizes into a concrete, terrifying corporate timeline.
Right, and this is where the news gets incredibly bleak. Because if corporations are pushing us toward a digital-only license-based future, there has to be a tipping point.
The point of no return.
Yeah, and the editorial drops the inciting incident for this entire deep dive. Sony has officially announced that beginning in January 2028, all new PlayStation games will be released digitally.
Wow.
No more physical discs, period.
January 2028.
Yeah.
That is a hard line in the sand. It is a seismic shift that fundamentally alters the landscape of console gaming.
And the editorial is surprisingly poetic when it breaks down the collateral damage of this mandate. It's not just about losing plastic boxes on a shelf, right? It laments the death of the culture surrounding physical media.
The social aspect of it.
Yeah. Bugsy talks about midnight launches, standing outside a store with hundreds of other people to get a stack of cases. He talks about the thrill of used game hunting in thrift stores. Oh, I miss that.
Right. He talks about the simple act of lending a game to a friend or trading it in when you're done with it. And he mentions the absolute security of knowing that if your internet goes down for a week, your single-player game still works perfectly.
The contrast the editorial draws here is brilliant because it highlights the legal reality of physical media versus digital media. Bugsy writes, quote, "If I buy a book, it's mine. If I buy a Blu-ray, it's mine. If I buy a vinyl record, it's mine."
And that relies on something called the first sale doctrine, right? Let's unpack that.
Yeah, exactly. The first sale doctrine is a legal concept that says once a publisher sells a physical copy of a copyrighted work, they lose the right to control the distribution of that specific copy.
Okay, so once I buy it.
Once you buy it, you can sell your physical book, you can lend it, you can burn it, you own that specific object. But the editorial exposes how digital storefronts completely bypass the first sale doctrine. Because you aren't buying a copy, you're buying a non-transferable license.
Right. You can't will a digital Steam library to your children. You can't sell your digital PlayStation games to a used game store.
It is the death of secondary markets, and it's terrifying. But just in case anyone thinks Bugsy is just being paranoid or spinning some dystopian sci-fi theory, the editorial brings the receipts. It points to the legacy store shutdowns as hard proof.
This is where the theoretical danger becomes historical fact.
Yep.
The editorial notes that Sony has confirmed plans to wind down the PlayStation Store on legacy systems over the coming year, specifically naming the PlayStation 3 and the PlayStation Vita.
Two huge systems.
Very huge.
Yeah.
Now, the corporate messaging is very careful here. Sony claims that previously purchased content is expected to remain downloadable for the foreseeable future.
Expected. That word is doing a lot of heavy lifting.
A ton of heavy lifting.
It is a massive legal trapdoor.
It absolutely is. Expected is not a guarantee. It's not a contractual obligation. And Bugsy argues that this very situation proves how precarious our digital dependencies are. Even if you can still download your old PS3 games today, the sheer fact that the storefront is winding down demonstrates that corporate infrastructure is transient.
Right, it's not forever.
Exactly. Servers are incredibly expensive to maintain. Eventually, the math will dictate that keeping the PS3 download servers online is no longer profitable. And when that day comes, the plug will be pulled, and every digital game you supposedly own on that system will just vanish into the ether.
Reading this editorial, it is impossible not to feel a profound sense of loss. Bugsy writes, "Call me nostalgic, I don't care." And honestly, we are 100% aligned with that sentiment.
Definitely.
He reads every scratch on a case tells a story. Those aren't just purchases, they're memories. And it makes you wonder, why should tangible memories, why should the cultural history of this medium disappear just because a licensing agreement was updated?
It's a really passionate defense of physical media as a form of personal and cultural history. But, the editorial doesn't just rely on emotion. It tackles the cold, hard reality of why this is happening.
Right, the economics. We have to
Right.
talk about the money. Because if this move to an all-digital future is so universally hostile to consumers and so detrimental to the preservation of the art form, why are the massive corporations forcing it through?
Well, Bugsy outlines the corporate math beautifully,
Hmm.
making these necessary economic concessions. He admits he isn't blind to the business reality.
Right.
Think about the supply chain logistics of a physical video game. You have to manufacture millions of plastic discs and cases. You have to print cover art. You have to physically ship those boxes on boats and trucks across the entire globe.
It's a massive operation.
It is. And then you have to negotiate shelf space with brick-and-mortar retailers like GameStop or Walmart, and those retailers take a cut of the profit.
So it's just an incredibly heavy overhead.
Massive overhead. Compared to all of that, digital distribution is practically free. You host a file on a server, a user downloads it, and the publisher keeps a significantly higher percentage of that $70 price tag. The profit margins are just vastly superior.
But the editorial highlights a crucial, incredibly deceptive spin that corporations use to justify this shift. Sony and companies like them publicly claim they are making this all-digital move because they're simply adapting to consumer preferences.
Right, shifting the blame.
Yeah, they point to the data showing that the majority of software sales are already digital, framing it as this natural evolution driven by what the players want.
And Bugsy's counter-argument to that is absolutely lethal. He states, quote, "Popularity isn't the same thing as preservation. Convenience isn't the same thing as ownership. And profit isn't the same thing as trust."
That is the most succinct takedown of corporate PR I have ever heard. Convenience is not the same thing as ownership.
It really isn't.
Just because it is easier for me to download a game from my couch doesn't mean I am actively consenting to give up my ownership rights.
Precisely. And if we connect this back to how we preserve human culture, the editorial makes a vital point. Museums, collectors, historical archives, they rely entirely on physical media.
Yeah, they can't archive a server ping.
Exactly. Cartridges from the 80s, CDs from the 90s, DVDs from the 2000s. Those tangible objects are the historical proof that these pieces of art existed. If the entire medium becomes locked behind proprietary encrypted digital servers, future archivists will have nothing to point to. They will be entirely locked out of gaming's history. We're watching cultural erasure happen in real time, all in the name of profit margins.
It is incredibly bleak. It really is. But amidst all this corporate doom and gloom, Bugsy's video source takes a moment to look around the current landscape and acknowledge the physical holdouts.
The ones still fighting the good fight.
Exactly. Who is still holding the line against this digital-only future?
Well, the video names a few key players.
Mm.
Nintendo is praised for sticking heavily to physical cartridges, which is great. Bugsy mentions SNK, noting they seem to be on the upswing with physical hardware.
Yeah.
Evercade is brought up as this fantastic bastion for retro physical releases. And there is genuine excitement in the video about Neo Geo.
Yeah, he mentions that we are miraculously getting brand new Neo Geo cards in 2026, which is just wild to think about.
It's amazing.
He even nostalgically wishes that Sega could re-enter the hardware market to help fight this digital trend, though he admits that's probably, hoping for a miracle.
It probably is. However, the video also offers a highly nuanced and somewhat critical view of one of the biggest names in modern physical media preservation.
Oh, limited run games.
Yes, limited run games.
This is a fascinating part of the video because his feelings are so mixed on them.
They really are. On one hand, he praises them for actually doing the work of producing physical media for games that would otherwise only exist digitally. Like he mentions being unironically thrilled with their Bubsy collection, actually defending Bubsy 1 and 2 as good games, which is definitely a hot take.
Very hot take.
And he praises their Gex collection.
But then he tells this incredibly frustrating story about buying their digital port of Tomba on Steam.
Right. Let's clarify what a digital port is for a second, just so everyone is on the same page. When an old game like Tomba, which originally came out on the original PlayStation in the 90s, is brought to a modern PC storefront like Steam, it requires a port. The code has to be adapted or wrapped in an emulator so it can run on modern hardware.
And according to Bugsy's video, this specific port of Tomba was a disaster.
A total mess.
He bought the game digitally, and he claims it simply didn't work for him. It was broken. So what was his solution? He literally had to dig through his closet, find his own original physical copy of Tomba from the 90s, and emulate it himself just to play the game he had just handed over money for.
It perfectly encapsulates the failure of the digital promise. The modern, convenient digital license was broken, and only the legacy physical media provided actual access to the art. But the video uses this frustration to point out an even more insidious problem with modern physical media.
The day one patch.
The day one patch.
Oh, this is the worst part of modern gaming. Explain how this undermines the whole concept of a physical disc for you listening.
So, in the old days, when a game went gold, the finished code was pressed onto a disc, and that disc contained the entire playable experience.
Right.
Today, because games are so massive and development cycles are so incredibly rushed, the disc that gets shipped to the store often contains an incomplete, buggy, or entirely unplayable version of the game. Sometimes it doesn't even contain the game at all. It literally just contains a license key.
So you buy a plastic box with a disc, you put it in your console, and the first thing it does is demand you connect to the internet to download a massive day one patch.
Exactly. The physical disc on your shelf is functionally useless on its own. It is just a plastic key that requires a digital server to unlock a playable game. And Bugsy laments this in the video because it means you don't actually own a functional piece of physical media.
Yeah.
You just own a very slow plastic download code.
Yeah.
And when those servers eventually go offline, that disk will be nothing more than a paperweight.
It feels like we're losing the battle on every front. The ports are broken, the physical discs are just license keys, and the corporations are criminalizing the communities that try to fix it. But what is so fascinating about this video source is that despite all of this systemic greed, the sheer passion for the medium within the community remains incredibly intense.
Intensely passionate and sometimes intensely toxic.
Yes, which leads us to this massive, wildly entertaining, and deeply psychological detour the video takes. Midway through ranting about servers and digital licenses, Bugsy pivots to call out a specific online troll in the community.
And this section of the video is a masterclass in dissecting modern internet culture and the anatomy of a hater. Bugsy refers to this individual as the SAO hater, noting that he previously went by the aliases Sword Artist and Movie Boss.
And the backstory here is just staggering. According to the video, this creator originally loved the anime Sword Art Online.
Right.
He wanted to be a massive, influential figurehead within the SAO fandom, but then he faced the slightest bit of internet friction.
The video claims this creator received 3 critiques and 2 mean comments on Twitter.
3 critiques, 2 mean comments.
Yep.
In the grand scheme of the internet, that is absolutely nothing.
It is a microscopic amount of pushback. But because his ego and his parasocial relationship with his audience were so incredibly fragile, that minor pushback completely shattered him.
It's actually kind of sad.
It is. According to Bugsy, this guy gave up on his dreams, abandoned his original channel, constantly renamed himself to hide from the embarrassment, and dedicated his entire online existence to viciously hating the very thing he once loved. He transitioned from a fan to a professional anti-fan.
And Bugsy points out how completely absurd this performative hate becomes. He lists off the ridiculous comparisons this SAO hater makes in his videos just to try and prove that Sword Art Online is terrible.
The comparisons are wild.
He claims that Avatar, specifically noting he means The Last Airbender, is better than SAO. He claims Toy Story is better.
Toy Story.
He brings up incredibly obscure or irrelevant things like L's Heart to Heart and something called 50-50, claiming they're all vastly superior to Sword Art Online.
The logic is completely disjointed, but, it reveals something deep about how online algorithms reward negativity. We see this in our own social media feeds all the time.
Oh, for sure.
Creators realize that nuanced, passionate critique doesn't get as many clicks as exaggerated hyperbolic rage. Anger is the most viral currency on the internet. This hater figured out that he could get more attention by screaming about how Toy Story is better than an anime than he ever could by actually engaging with the material thoughtfully.
But the absolute best part of this feud, like the real meta commentary, is when Bugsy brings up artificial intelligence, because this is where the hypocrisy of the hater really shines.
The AI irony here is incredibly sharp. Bugsy points out that this hater, who produces endless streams of content criticizing the art of SAO, uses what Bugsy calls AI slop to generate the thumbnails and visuals for his videos.
Yeah.
He generates these boring, unstylized live-action versions of the SAO character Kirito.
And the video criticizes this not because AI is inherently evil, but because of how the hater is using it. It is an incredibly lazy use of technology, symptomatic of a creator who has simply given up on putting any genuine human effort into their work.
Exactly. And the crucial distinction here is that Bugsy doesn't condemn AI entirely.
Yeah.
In fact, he explicitly defends his own use of AI in the video.
Right, he's very open about it.
He mentions that he uses AI as a tool to help produce content, specifically mentioning he uses it for the deep dive, adding stylized flourishes to his writing and utilizing it for rapid fact-checking. He also mentions he uses AI writing prompts in his spare time just to push the technology to its limits for his own amusement.
He makes a very clear delineation. He says, quote, "I may use AI here and there, but you solely depended on it." He views AI as a supplementary tool to enhance genuine creativity and effort. You still have to have a vision. You still have to care. But he views the haters' use of AI as a crutch to compensate for a bitter, stagnant lack of imagination. The hater uses AI because he has no artistic soul left. He just needs an image to put behind his screaming.
And that striking contrast leads to the final, incredibly moving point of the video. Bugsy looks at this bitter, isolated hater who he notes is essentially screaming at an empty room because even the other internet trolls have abandoned him, and Bugsy actively chooses a different path.
He chooses joy as a form of resistance.
Precisely. Despite the looming Microsoft server crackdowns, despite the terrifying Sony 2028 all-digital mandate, despite the broken ports and the corporate greed, he refuses to let the gloom or the internet trolls ruin his actual experience of the medium.
He pivots entirely away from the anger and excitedly announces his upcoming gaming plans to his audience. He tells them he is going to stream a game called Echoes of Ironcrad on July 9th, specifically hyped that he gets to do it a day early.
He was so excited.
And he enthusiastically mentions he has already pre-ordered a game called Splatoon Raiders, which drops on July 10th.
And this perfectly synthesizes the ultimate message of both the video and the editorial. When he signs off the video with his catchphrase, "Peace like chaos grease," he is delivering a profound lesson. This entire deep dive hasn't just been about the literal legal ownership of digital video games. It has been about the ownership of your passion.
That is so powerful.
It is a plea to the audience. Do not let massive corporate greed turn you into a cynic. Do not let a few online haters turn you into a stagnant, bitter person screaming at a wall. Do not become like the SAO hater. You have to acknowledge the flaws in the system, you have to fight for your consumer rights, but you absolutely cannot lose the joy of the medium you claim to love. You have to maintain ownership of your enthusiasm.
So as we pull back from all of this, let's look at the massive terrain we've covered today. We started by looking at how Microsoft's heavy-handed policing of private servers is treating passionate, community-building fans like literal criminals.
Yeah.
We unpacked the terrifying reality of digital EULAs and DRM, where you are paying premium prices for a revocable lease, and how that system actively incentivizes piracy. We looked at Sony's chilling 2028 timeline that threatens to eradicate the permanence of physical PlayStation media entirely, replacing it with a fragile, server-dependent ecosystem. And through it all, we saw how crucial it is to fight for the preservation of this medium without letting the toxicity of the internet steal our joy.
It is a complex, rapidly evolving landscape. And based on the editorial we read today, we want to leave you, the listener, with a direct call to action. Sometime today, turn on your console or open up Steam on your PC. Look at your digital library. Scroll through all those thumbnails of games you've paid for over the years and truly, deeply ask yourself the question posed by Bugsy. If I don't really own what I'm paying for, what exactly am I buying?
And as you ponder the fragility of that digital library, I want to leave you with one final, deeply chilling thought. A scenario that isn't explicitly in the sources, but stems directly from the legal precedents we've unpacked today.
That's that.
Well, we know the industry has successfully, legally defined modern digital gaming as a revocable license. We know they use internet check-ins to verify that license. What happens when a corporation decides to retroactively apply this logic to the physical media you already own?
Oh, wow.
Could an upcoming mandatory system update for your console quietly require a permanent online license check for the older physical discs that are currently sitting safely on your shelf? Could a single line of updated code render all of that preserved, tangible history completely useless the next time your internet goes down?
Given the current trajectory of the industry, it is a terrifyingly plausible possibility.
It really is. Keep examining your libraries, keep advocating for your rights as a consumer, and most importantly, keep questioning the world around you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.